My Life by Talk Talk with No Doubt, and that's actually one of my favorite songs to do live, and I did not write that one.
Gwen Stefani breaks silence, her emotional confession after The Voice after nearly a decade of bright studio lights, swirling camera rigs, rotating red chairs, and the unpredictable emotional rhythm that only a singing competition can generate. Gwen Stefani's exit from The Voice culminated in a moment far more intimate and fragile than any of the big stage-produced farewells reality shows usually bill for their stars, and the entire production atmosphere seemed to pause around her as though everyone understood she was carrying something she had not voiced before. Her tenure on the show stretched across years marked by team victories, millions of viewer votes, playful on-screen banter, and a love story that unfolded in real time before an audience who felt as though they were watching a live-action fairy tale. Yet when the time came for her final appearance, it arrived with a strangely quiet softness rather than the fireworks that had accompanied Blake Shelton's departure months earlier. Instead of a choreographed farewell segment or a rehearsed speech delivered before cameras, what lingered in the studio was a small, nearly invisible moment backstage. One that would end up resonating louder than any primetime montage. Crew members later recalled seeing Gwen, normally so expressive and sparkling in spirit, standing off the side with a folded slip of paper in her hand. The kind people keep close when they're not sure they're ready to speak the words out loud. The note was passed discreetly to a member of the staff, almost as if she wanted her gratitude and vulnerability to be recorded somewhere without having to perform it. And though no one expected to hear from her again that night, something shifted when the cast and crew
This other song called Baby Don't Lie, which I did not write on. It used to be Baby Don't Cry, and I changed it to Baby Don't Lie. But that's
gathered for the informal rap party that followed taping. Under the dimmer glow of celebration lights, stripped of the usual live show pressure, she was nudged gently toward a microphone, not as a coach addressing America, but as someone saying goodbye to colleagues who had seen her through some of the most transformative years of her life. And in that quieter, less staged space, Gwen finally released the sentence she'd been holding. I came here to coach voices and found mine again. That single line, delivered with a crack in her voice that suggested both release and revelation, was recorded on a phone from somewhere in the crowd. No one expected the clip to travel beyond the room, but by morning it was circulating across celebrity news pages, fan accounts, and short-form video feeds. What struck people was not just the words, but the tone, an unguarded sincerity that stood in contrast to the polished messaging usually associated with entertainment industry farewells. Fans interpreted the statement as a kind of emotional closure, a summing up of a personal journey that had taken place parallel to the televised competition. The public saw her as a superstar dropping into a network show, but the reality, as she subtly acknowledged in that moment, was that she had entered the series at a time when her personal foundation had been shaken by divorce, public scrutiny, and a period of reassessment in her career. The Voice had arrived for her not simply as a televised job, but as a creative shelter, a place where she could focus on nurturing others while slowly piecing together her own sense of artistic identity again. For viewers who had followed her arc across seasons, the confession hit with unusual force because it reframed everything they thought they understood about her participation. It wasn't just a platform for celebrity coaches to compete for bragging rights, but, for Gwen, a kind of emotional workshop where she rediscovered parts of herself she hadn't realized had gone dormant. Commentators noted that the snippet of her speech was reshared more widely than the official finale performances themselves, a testament to how strongly the public responded to a moment that felt unscripted in an otherwise highly produced environment. Digital analysts even pointed out that search terms like Gwen Stefani emotional speech and Gwen Stefani The Voice farewell experienced a surge that outpaced typical post-episode chatter, demonstrating how emotionally driven narratives often outlast musical competition results when it comes to online longevity. The confession also echoed a theme familiar to audiences of channels and storytellers who chronicle the emotional transitions of artists. Those passages when public figures quietly close long chapters without surrendering the core of who they are. Just as Diane Keaton's gentle step back from certain roles or Robert Redford's reflective commentary on aging and legacy have offered subtle wisdom about creative evolution, Gwen saw farewell added a modern entry to that lineage. An acknowledgement that endings, especially in entertainment, are not necessarily about bowing out, but about recognizing when a particular space has done its healing work. Her story illustrated how the act of guiding others, encouraging aspiring singers, pushing them through nerves and celebrating their breakthroughs, had simultaneously guided her inward. For many fans, the emotional resonance came from understanding that she began her journey on the show while navigating heartbreak and rebuilding, and that her departure symbolized not retreat, but renewal. In retrospect, the years she spent spinning in that iconic red chair represented far more than televised mentorship. They symbolized a gradual reclamation of confidence, joy, and creative agency. Leaving was bound to unleash an emotional tide because the show had functioned as a stabilizing anchor during a tumultuous period of reinvention. As she hinted in her unscripted mic moment, the experience had restored her sense of voice, something much deeper than singing. Ultimately, her farewell did not rely on dramatic editing, soaring music, or choreographed sentimentality. It landed because it was quiet, human, and raw, revealing that behind the polished image of a superstar coach was a woman who had used the very environment designed to elevate others as a space to rebuild herself. And while the cameras didn't frame the moment as a season-defining goodbye, the essence of her message became what many consider the true finale, the kind Hollywood often overlooks in favor of spectacle. When all the lights dimmed and the sets were rolled away, what lingered was a portrait of a person who didn't simply complete a contract, but completed a chapter of personal rediscovery. In a culture that usually celebrates loud exits and grand declarations, Gwen Stefani's understated confession reminded audiences that sometimes the most powerful turning points happen in quiet rooms, long after the show is wrapped, when someone finally allows themselves to speak a truth they didn't know they were ready to voice. The show may have ended for her, but the rediscovery she described, that sense of finding her voice again, became the deeper message audiences carried with them, a reminder that even in the heart of public entertainment, the most meaningful transformations are often the ones that unfold privately, then surface in a single sentence that resonates far beyond the moment in which it was spoken. As the reverberations of Gwen Stefani's understated farewell continued to ripple across social spaces and commentary channels, many observers found themselves reflecting on why such a modest moment of vulnerability had captured so much attention. And the answer seemed to lie not in spectacle, but in the way her goodbye intersected with a broader cultural hunger to witness celebrities in genuinely human transitions. While audiences have grown accustomed to seeing stars promote projects, craft soundbites, and navigate publicity cycles with precision, Gwen's confession cut through that media polish because it spoke to a universal experience. The realization that sometimes the spaces we enter to serve others unexpectedly become the places where we mend ourselves. The Voice, with its bright colors, rotating chairs, playful rivalry, and larger-than-life performances, was never marketed as a therapeutic setting. Yet for 9 years it had provided Gwen with constancy, weekly structure, creative camaraderie, and the steady hum of work that keeps a person anchored when the rest of their life is shifting. That subtle therapeutic function is part of what caused her confession to resonate so deeply. She was acknowledging something many people experience but rarely articulate, which is that the environments supporting our growth do not always look like the spaces typically associated with healing. They can be workplaces, friendships, creative projects, or even competitive arenas that push us, steady us, and help us reassemble pieces we thought were lost. Her comment, "I came here to coach voices and found mine again," became a kind of interpretive lens through which fans revisited her entire run on the show. Suddenly, moments that once seemed simple or playful took on added emotional dimension. The warm encouragement she offered timid contestants, the way she could laugh off mistakes, the way she often spoke about music as if it were a lifeline rather than a profession. That reframing contributed to the story's longevity online, giving fan communities an opportunity to revisit old clips and see them through the lens of a woman rebuilding her artistic and emotional identity. In this sense, the viral moment functioned almost like the final chapter of a book that caused readers to flip back through earlier pages and discover the narrative threads they hadn't noticed before. People began discussing how her presence had shaped the dynamic among the coaches, how her softer communication style balanced the louder personalities, and how her natural tendency to uplift contestants often shifted the emotional tone of episodes in ways that were subtle but significant. Beyond fans, the entertainment press engaged in a broader conversation about the evolving nature of celebrity departures. Instead of focusing solely on career implications, what she might do next, whether she might return for guest appearances, how her exit might reshape the coach lineup, journalists and commentators gravitated toward the human aspect of her goodbye. This cultural shift reflects a growing interest in transitions, not merely achievements. Audiences are no longer satisfied with traditional narratives that portray success as constant upward motion. They respond more deeply to stories that acknowledge pause, reflection, and reinvention. Gwen's farewell aligned with that shift, offering a counter-narrative to myth that public figures navigate their careers with unwavering confidence. Her confession revealed that even icons can feel disoriented, uncertain, or depleted, and that creative reinvention often occurs in places the outside world might overlook. This period of reflection also led people to draw comparisons to other artists who experienced unexpected creative renewals later in their careers. Much like Diane Keaton found her stride in quieter, more personal projects, or Robert Redford used selective on-screen appearances to explore legacy rather than fame, Gwen's trajectory illustrated how artists evolve in cycles rather than straight lines. Their most meaningful chapters are often shaped not by blockbuster achievements, but by internal shifts that unfold away from the spotlight. For Gwen, that internal shift appeared to occur not in studios producing albums or world tours, but in a brightly lit set filled with hopeful singers and production team who saw her every workday. That setting, though designed for entertainment, became an ecosystem of encouragement that mirrored the very mentorship she was giving to contestants. Part of why the moment gained such strong traction online is the way it tapped into a collective fascination with artistic reinvention. People admire celebrities not simply for their accomplishments, but for their ability to evolve, to shed old versions of themselves and step into new stages of life with authenticity. Gwen's farewell provided a perfect case study in this process. It illustrated that reinvention does not require a dramatic public announcement or a radical career pivot. Sometimes it begins with single acknowledgement of growth, spoken softly in a room of people who help make that growth possible. That recognition of mutual influence. Coaches shaping contestants, contestants revitalizing coaches, an entire environment contributing to personal transformation, created a narrative that was richer and more emotionally layered than the competition format itself. The aftermath of her farewell speech also sparked conversations about the nature of closure. In the entertainment industry, closure is often overshadowed by promotion. Stars typically exit shows amid scheduling announcements, new ventures, or carefully managed press cycles. But Gwen's closure was quiet, emotional, and more aligned with personal truth than professional branding. It underscored that endings can be meaningful even when they're not flashy. In fact, the absence of spectacle made her moment feel more resonant because it allowed the emotional message to stand on its own. People related to the idea of closing a chapter not because of external validation, but because they recognized an internal shift that signaled the right time to move forward. In many ways, her confession also served as a reminder of how intertwined personal life and artistic life can be. When she joined the show during a difficult period of personal transition, she was not simply stepping into a coaching role. She was stepping into a space that would challenge her to articulate musical identity, reconnect with creative instincts, and rebuild emotional resilience. Her evolution over the seasons reflected the gradual unfolding of someone rediscovering what excites them, what grounds them, and what gives their work meaning. This intertwining of personal and artistic growth explains why the farewell carried such emotional weight. It wasn't just the end of the job. It was the final page of a chapter that had helped her heal. Fans who watched her journey unfold across episodes often commented on her warmth, her ability to connect with contestants on a personal level, and her genuine delight in seeing others succeed. That quality of presence, the ability to find joy in someone else's breakthrough, mirrored the healing she was experiencing herself. Her mentorship style wasn't based on critique or competition, but on affirmation, encouragement, and emotional clarity. It's easy to imagine that offering those qualities to others created a mirror through which she recognized her own emotional needs. That reciprocal relationship between giving guidance and gaining self-knowledge is part of what made her confession feel so powerful. She had helped others find their voices, and, in doing so, rediscovered her own. Ultimately, the significance of her farewell lies not in the buzz it generated, but in the timelessness of its message. Long after the wave of shares, reactions, and commentary settles, the core sentiment remains relevant. That people can unexpectedly rediscover themselves in the middle of routines, workplaces, or commitments that initially seemed simply functional. Growth rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives quietly, accumulates slowly, and eventually crystallizes into a realization that can be expressed in a single, heartfelt sentence. Gwen's final message captured that phenomenon with poetic simplicity. What she found was not just a renewed artistic voice, but an emotional truth about the environments that shape us, the relationships that sustain us, and the ways in which personal reinvention often occurs when we're focused on uplifting others. In this light, her farewell doesn't feel like the closing of a door, but rather the gentle turning of a page, signaling readiness for whatever creative or personal chapter comes next. And while the world may or may not see the full results of that rediscovery immediately, the significance of her moment lies in the authenticity with which she acknowledged it. The show ended, but the essence of her realization, the reclaiming of a voice she didn't realize she had misplaced, continues to echo in the hearts of fans and in the broader cultural conversation about resilience, transition, and the quiet power of emotional truth. In the weeks that followed, the resonance of Gwen Stefani's farewell took on a life of its own, becoming something more than a momentary viral clip. It evolved into a symbol of how personal breakthroughs can emerge in the most unexpected chapters of life. Comment threads grew into long conversations where fans shared their own experiences of rediscovering purpose in ordinary routines, drawing parallels between Gwen's journey and their own moments of quiet clarity. Her simple acknowledgement created a ripple effect because it reminded people that identity is not fixed, It shifts, fractures, rebuilds, and sometimes strengthens in places we never thought to look. And that is the real beauty of what her confession represented. Not a celebrity delivering a polished goodbye, but a person acknowledging that the work she came to do for others had, in turn, repaired something within herself. As the entertainment cycle moved forward, the weight of her words didn't fade. Instead, they settled into the cultural memory of the show, becoming one of those understated but unforgettable moments that fans return to when discussing the program's emotional history. For longtime viewers, her departure added a layer of emotional meaning to The Voice's legacy, illustrating how the show's impact extended far beyond competition wins or chart-topping covers. It offered a window into the deeply human experiences unfolding behind the scenes, moments of vulnerability, connection, and self-realization that rarely make it to air but profoundly shape the people involved. Gwen's farewell reminded the world that even in environments built for entertainment, real emotional journeys are taking place. Her story endures because it captures something universal. The recognition that sometimes a chapter ends not with applause but with honesty, and that honesty becomes the truest form of closure.